Using colors is probably one of the biggest hurdles that artists face. Knowing how to use colors effectively to adjust the mood or the atmosphere, or to even pick colors that actually go well together. It's really hard for a lot of people to make it work. So that's what this video is all about. Understanding color. By the end of this video, you'll discover how to use colors effectively to alter the story or to create pleasing color schemes. So I'm going to break it down into 3 core concepts, starting with why color is so important, then saturation and value, and finally color harmonies. So starting with the why. Colors, when used correctly, can guide the viewer's eyes to what's important. Like in this scene, your eyes are immediately drawn to this nice green cylinder in the center of the screen. It can also be used to tell the story or completely change the mood of the scene entirely. However, when used incorrectly, like in my terrible scene here from 2007, it can make the viewer feel lost, nauseous, or even irritated. Basically, colors can make or break your scene. Very, very important to get it nailed down. Even worse, in terms of photorealism, color is one of the biggest giveaways that your image is fake. If you don't believe me, take out your latest work, convert it to grayscale, and notice how it immediately looks a lot more photorealistic. Getting colors right is just hard. Throughout the day, our eyes soak in millions of hues, saturations, and shades, but we rarely ever stop to study them. So, when it comes time to actually work, we have a hard time drawing from our memory what color is used for. One could argue that it goes back to our childhood. As kid, we learned about colors in their most simplified raw formats: red, blue, yellow, etc. But when we tried using these raw colors in our art, we probably quickly noticed that the results came out really ugly. But why is that? Saturation and value, that's why. Saturation is the intensity or purity of the color, and it's one of the biggest culprits when it comes to ugly color work. The second is value, which refers to the brightness or the darkness of the color. So, let's have a look at these. On the left here, 100% saturation, really hard to look at. But tone it down to 20% and it becomes almost a pink fleshy color. Again, I haven't adjusted the color at all, but just changing the saturation gives you very different results. Let's try it again with value. 100% on the left, 20% on the right. You can almost barely see it. So that's adjusting the brightness of the color basically. So you can see that it now looks more like a muddy brown than a red. Now, if you had to tweak both of these, the saturation and the value, you can see that you can create a whole plethora of different shades. All from just one raw color at the start, as is demonstrated in this painting. I'm fairly certain that the only color used in this painting is red. So just mixing it with white and black, changing the saturation and the value, able to create an entire image from just one color. Very interesting. Now, in the CG world, saturation is probably one of the biggest offenders. A lot of artists choose highly saturated colors because they think it will make the result look much better. But really it couldn't be further from the truth. Highly saturated colors not only look incredibly fake, but using saturated colors everywhere gives your eyes nowhere to rest, which is really important in an image. So having a look at this, you can see staring at it for too long, it becomes a little bit irritating. So desaturated areas of your scene are very, very important. But that's not to say that bright saturated colors are all bad. In this example, you can see that your eyes are automatically drawn to the red, bright mountains in the background there. That was deliberate. That can be used as a compositional element. So your eyes are following back and forth along the same path as the camels are traveling. Very cool. And in this image, it's pretty clear that the artist wanted you to notice those flowers. It's also called wild poppies, which is kind of a giveaway. But the red, highly fluorescent color of them, it almost jumps off the screen at you. So really startling, and probably the one element that you'll remember this image for. And it can also be used for storytelling. Throughout history, if you have a look at a lot of paintings, Jesus is always wearing red. And that's basically to focus the attention on him and also to make him look powerful and mighty. And in terms of cartoons, highly saturated or bright colors can actually work in your favor because it can immediately note to the viewer that they're looking at something which is fake, and it really plays to its surreal, unrealistic qualities. Brightness and saturation can even adjust your mood. If you remember at the start of Up, the colors were very vibrant. There was a lot of oranges, there was pinks, fluorescent grass, and really, really vibrant colors. This was to signify the joyous, happy moment in their lives. But then it later turned to sadness, and the colors immediately changed to very desaturated tones. A lot of grays, a lot of browns. And if you have a look at that image on the right there, I mean, there's almost really no color at all. I mean, it's just a little bit of blue, kind of some brown in there, but nearly all desaturated. So that helps you to feel the coldness and the loneliness that the characters are experiencing. This same effect was used at the start of The Incredibles and as well as The Matrix. Color is a really powerful mood changer, and it's used a lot in Hollywood as well as video games, which is why Call of Duty is completely desaturated almost. It can also be used for composition. So having a look at this image, your eyes are probably automatically drawn into the background there where there is some dudes wearing some gnarly red pants. So it's guiding your eyes from the foreground to the background just by having something highly saturated. So very important. A similar effect can be seen right here. If it weren't for that highly saturated parrot there in the foreground, it's unlikely that this image would be as successful as it is. The parrot really gives you something to anchor yourself to, so you're then free to explore the rest of the scene, so to speak. So just to summarize what I've already spoken about, saturation and value in a nutshell. Don't overdo it. Don't saturate and use high values all throughout your scene. It will always come out horrible. Use saturation and value to guide the viewer, to tell a story. Who is powerful? What are you drawing attention to? You can use it to change the mood. Use vibrant colors in an animation and desaturate it, when you want to change it to be sad. Or you can just use it to draw attention to something that otherwise wouldn't be getting attention. So that's the why, saturation and value, which leads us to point number 3, color harmonies. Sorry for blinding you there. So I love this topic. Color harmonies basically pertains to the fact that some colors look better together than others. It's also known as color schemes or complementary harmonies. It has a number of different words. So what I'm going to be talking about is 6 popular and common color harmonies that work well. They're based on concrete ideas, and you can start using them in your work straight away. So the first one is monochromatic, probably the easiest one to start with because it involves only one color. The entire image uses just one color. This is best for single subjects because it forces the viewer to focus on the details of the image, the changes in the value, the saturation. And it could also be used to create a very striking atmospheric effect, as will be demonstrated right now. So you can see here your eyes are drawn to the silhouette of the rocks and the figures, and you're focusing on the story as opposed to the colors. Very cool. And this image here, aside from that yellow moon at the top there, is entirely painted with red, giving a very striking atmospheric effect. And this next one I absolutely love. Creepy, chilling, and it's all using one color, yellow. Very, very cool effect, and used very well. All right, number 2 is analogous. This one is cool. It's about colors that are adjacent to each other on the wheel. So generally, about the distance you can see right there. The cool thing about this one is that it's easy on the eyes. It generally creates a peaceful and comfortable mood, mainly because it is seen a lot in nature with, green trees, blue skies, things like that. The colors are very related. So to give you some examples, this image here, at the start it might almost look monochromatic since there's a lot of that purple in the background there. But you can see over here, if I put my mouse here, you can see there is a blue sort of shawl resting on that chair there. And then of course you've got this striking pink flower there. Really great use of that color scheme. And then here, as the example with nature, you've got some dark green grass here. You've got some light green up here in this tree here. And then of course the sky with a nice blue there. And in this image, really awesome example, totally striking. So you got this lovely red dress, of course, and then the use of purple and pinks throughout the rest of the scene. And in this image here, aside from a couple of areas where there's a blue, the rest of it is all really using yellow, orange, and red. So if you look in the background there, yellow taxis, you got some orange signs, red car, etc. So really nice effect. Which brings us to number 3, the triadic color harmony scheme. So this one is probably one of the hardest to pull off. It involves colors which are equally distant to each other on the wheel. As I said, hardest to pull off. It's really best for cartoons or surreal scenes because it can really come across as being quite playful. It's probably not the best example to put right after that. But you can see here, again, Jesus is wearing that striking red and then using blue and yellow to highlight other elements. And it's created a very pleasing looking result. And here, really great example. It doesn't have to be just the primary colors, by the way. The triadic can be, as I said, equally distant to each other on the color wheel. So this one is using mainly orange, green, and blues. And you can see it's a really great effect. It comes across really cheerfully and yeah, just really nice. All right, number 4, complementary. This one is probably one I'm sure you've all heard of before. It's basically colors that are opposing each other on the wheel. So it's very, very popular. A lot of artwork, not only today, but throughout history, use complementary color schemes. It's just naturally pleasing to the eye. Colors that are opposite to each other on the wheel just look better. I mean, they just look nice next to each other. But something that a lot of people don't mention is that you shouldn't use both colors equally. Like you shouldn't use 50% green and 50% red. You should be using one color predominantly, generally the weaker color. So in this case, if you're using green and red, you'd be using the green the most. So you'd be using that for like most of the scene and then using some splashes of red. So, you know, like some really desaturated greens and then some, you know, saturated areas of red. Have a look at some examples. Here we go. Very similar to the movie Brave, I think. You could see a lot of green. She's wearing a nice green dress there, a lot of green along the grass there. And then, of course, this red shawl, her red hair, and the sunset and everything else there, creating a really nice scheme. Here, this one is a lot harder to notice since it looks almost monochromatic. A lot of yellow throughout everything. But if you look way in the background there, you can see some violet color. So yeah, that is a complementary color scheme. And here, I love this one. It's a great example of using cool and warm colors, which are naturally complementary. That can also be used to affect the mood of the scene as well. If you want a certain part of the scene to look sort of cold, then using blue, cool, aqua type colors can have that effect. And then using warm colors such as red and orange can make it look inviting or pleasant. And this one, really popular one that was on CG Society for a long time, by Tony Bratincevic, sorry if I pronounced your name wrong, using the red and green color scheme, coming across really, really nicely, and very powerful looking effect. And this one here, very obvious. Red and green seems to be a very popular complementary scheme. And then this example here, as I showed you before, we've got aqua for most of the elements, and then in the background there you've got some highlights of some warm orange lights, and especially on the screens there, but there's virtually almost no other color in the scene, which is kind of interesting. And in this one here, I love this one, Drogo from Game of Thrones. It's mostly yellow, mostly has this yellow orangey tinge to it, and you might be thinking, where is the blue? Well, it's here. It's from the rim light. And I would say without that blue, this image would not look as striking or as good as it does. That blue, even though it's really subtle and it's only a small amount, it really does help to balance out the heavy use of this yellow color. All right, so now let's talk about split complementary. Split complementary color schemes are very similar to the one we just talked about, using opposites, but basically you take one end of it and then you split it. So doing that allows you more creative freedom. So instead of just being locked to 2 colors, it allows you to use 3 colors. Generally, this type of color scheme feels more lively and joyous. So I'll give you an example here. Love this painting. Really nice use of some purples there, of course, all through the flowers. And then you've got some yellow flowers here, the green plants, of course, and then, yellow in the background. So basically just 3 colors all throughout the whole thing. And it's a really striking, very pleasing looking result. And this one, I love this image. We've got some really nice orange trees there. This striking green lawn here, and then of course the nice cool blue calming sky. So those 3 colors going together, they work out really well. And even though they're really highly saturated, there are elements of low value and desaturation. Like you can see these trees in the background here, they've been desaturated. It's really this main foreground where you've got this orange against this blue, which are naturally complementary as well. They go really well together, and then you've got some dark areas in the grass, etc. And then this one here, this one's a little bit harder to notice, but you can see obviously you've got some yellow on the robot itself. And then of course the blue sky, and you might be looking, where is the orange? And it's in the sunset in the background there. So very subtle, but again, it does give you a little bit more freedom using 3 colors as opposed to 2. And this one here, I love this one by Carlos. It's a great use. It looks like 2 colors, but really it's 3. So we've got this blue color, which is of course going through her hair and the dress. But then the plant itself, you've got some, especially on those the stamens, if that's how you pronounce it, of the flowers there. They sort of come out as this aqua color, almost a greenish sort of color in the background. Even a little bit of purple there. I didn't notice that before. But yeah, really nice use of a split complementary scheme there. This one, again, you might think this is just a complementary scheme, thinking that it's just blue and orange there on the book. But if you have a look at her hair, you can see that it's red. It's got a nice red tint to it, especially on this curtain over here as well. There's a little bit of red. So a nice use of 3 colors there, coming out really nicely. And of course this one here, really love this image. Great use of colors, especially for a cartoon scene. Highly saturated, lively, joyous look to it. You've got of course the yellow bananas, the pink flower, very vibrant in her hair, and then the green trees and this dress here as well. You could argue that there's some blue, like there's a lot of blue sky and the sea, but I would say there's a lot of green in that. Like it's not, it's more of a greenish aqua sort of color. And as you can see, I mean, the results speak for themselves. Lovely, just dazzling looking image. Great use of the split complementary scheme. All right, finally, let's talk about the tetratic, or let's just call it the double complementary. That's its other name. I prefer to call it double complementary. So this is basically the complementary color scheme doubled. So it's just choosing 2 pairs of opposites, really. It doesn't really matter where they are on the wheel. Just choose 2 different pairs. So it's best used for foregrounds and backgrounds. Like I wouldn't really recommend using it for like mixing everything in the same sort of area. Sort of hard to describe. I'll show you some examples in a sec. But like, for example, using the foreground, you might want to have, 1 pair, and then way in the background, maybe balance another pair. Never ever use 25% of each. Like what I said before about using complementary colors, don't use 50-50. Same with this. If you use 25% of each, it would just look horrible. It's just chaos. So you want to have, some like the weak colors, use them primarily, and then use the splashes of the brighter colors. Hard to pull off, but it can produce some pretty pleasing looking results. Having a look at this one, for example, this is an example of the foreground background. The foreground is using the green and red pairing, and then way in the background, sort of hard to see, but you've got some violets and some yellows coming through there. So that's an example. And this one here, this one you might not think is a double complementary, but you have a look at it more and you'll notice it. You've of course got this reddish orange building there, so that makes up the red. Then you've got the yellow coming through on this light here, as well as in these buildings here. The blue coming through on the sky, which just leaves the green left, and that is in the water. Very, very desaturated. Really nice use of it, but it's this nice green sort of murkiness. And as well as that, you've got some splashes of green in the plants here and the vine as well. So a really nice use of using 4 colors together. And this one I love. It's an excellent use. Of course, the main color for this image, which your eyes are most drawn to, is the red hat. And then opposite to that is this jacket or hoodie that he's wearing, which is this green color. So looking at this color wheel, you can see they're paired, the red and the green. So where's the other two colors? In the background. You can see the background, mostly blue with some little yellow bokeh effect lights in the background there. So again, that's foreground, background, just pairing the two. Foreground's paired and the background is paired, creating a really nice, pleasing result. And then finally, to leave on this one you probably wouldn't think is using 4 colors, but again, it is there. So there is a lot of blue, but you can see that there's a difference. You've got this aqua, greenish, bright blue, and then you've got this deep, sort of murky blue. So those are the two different blues there. And then you've got this nice blonde, yellowy hair here, and that goes in really well with that deep blue. So those are nice complementary colors. And then the skin is this more warmer orangish color, and you've got even some red lips there as well. And that goes balancing this aqua color, which is going into her mermaid tail there. Really nice use of it. Those nice, vibrant, funky colors again really plays to the surreal qualities of a cartoon render. So that's it. To summarize this whole video, saturation. Use it sparingly, not over the whole thing. Use it to highlight the areas of interest and to help tell a story. Think about the overall image. Values. Use values of high contrast to draw attention to things. So that's basically brightness versus darkness. And then talking about the color harmonies, these are the 6 again. First, monochromatic, which is 1 color. 2, analogous, using adjacent colors. Triadic, using equally distant colors, 3 of them. Complementary, opposing colors on the wheel. Split complementary, 1 complementary and extended. And then finally the double complementary, just the 2 pairs of opposing colors. So that's pretty much it, guys. I'd leave on one final note, and that is don't stress. Colors can be really fun. It can be stressful when you're experimenting and you're trying to play with it and trying to make something that works. It sometimes does just take a lot of practice to come up and have develop an eye for seeing a combination that will actually work with your scene, especially with 3D scenes where you've got a lot of different shading as well as bounce lighting and stuff like that, and that can kind of mess up your scheme sometimes. So just basically have fun with it. It can be fun provided you don't stress, and just enjoy the process of learning the colors. If you wanted the notes for this presentation as well, they're up on Blender Guru, and as well as that, I provided some resources. So some sites where you can read up more on some color schemes, as well as some programs which will help you develop some color schemes. And finally, special thanks to all of these artists who were nice enough to let me use it in this presentation. Big thanks to all of you. That's it from me, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. Have fun with colors, and I'll see you next time. Bye.